The villagers called him the Watchman. No one knew his real name, and no one dared to ask. He sat by the edge of the forest, wrapped in a tattered cloak, his eyes sunken yet sharp, as if he could see things no one else could. Travelers passing through the village often ignored him, dismissing him as just another old man with too many stories to tell. But those who listened, they never stayed in the village long enough to explain why. Late one evening, a group of 4 friends, Ryan, Jake, Emily, and Sarah, stopped in the village on their way to an old heritage site deep in the mountains. The villagers warned them about the forest, said it was cursed, but the friends laughed it off. "You city folks never listen," muttered the Watchman, eyeing them as they packed their belongings. "The forest doesn't welcome visitors at night. Stay here till morning." Ryan smirked. "Oh, come on, old man, you just want to scare us. It's just trees and darkness." The Watchman's face darkened. "It's not the trees you should fear. It's what hides behind them." The group exchanged glances. Sarah, the most cautious of the 4, hesitated. "Maybe we should stay." Jake laughed, slinging his backpack over his shoulder. "Come on, Sarah. We're losing daylight. If we hurry, we'll reach before it gets too dark." The Watchman sighed. "I warned you," he said, his voice almost a whisper. As they stepped onto the forest path, an eerie silence engulfed them. No chirping crickets, no rustling leaves, just the crunch of their footsteps. The deeper they went, the colder the air became. The trees seemed taller, their shadows stretching unnaturally. It felt as if something unseen was watching them. Halfway through, they spotted a shrine by the side of the road, a small stone structure covered in moss, with a rusted bell hanging above it. A faint hum filled the air, though there was no wind. "Creepy," Sarah whispered. "Let's just keep moving," Ryan said, suddenly uneasy. Then they heard it, a whisper, software indistinct, but everywhere at once. Jake spun around. "Who said that?" Nobody answered. The whispering grew louder, overlapping voices calling out in a language none of them understood. Panic set in. They picked up their pace, walking faster, then running. The path behind them no longer looked familiar. Trees stood in places they hadn't before. The air grew thick, suffocating. And then the voices stopped. Silence. Utter silence. Ryan gasped, bending over to catch his breath. "Okay, what the hell was that?" Emily pointed ahead, her hand trembling. "Guys, where's the road?" The path had vanished. Sarah whimpered. "We're lost." A rustling sound. Close, too close. Something moved between the trees, a shape shifting in the darkness. It didn't step, it glided, its presence a shadow darker than the night itself. And then the laughter started, a deep, guttural chuckle that seemed to echo from everywhere. The friends clung to each other as the shadows moved closer. The shrine bell rang, once, twice, then silence again. Suddenly the path reappeared. Without thinking they ran, not stopping until they burst out of the forest and back into the village. The Watchman was waiting. He didn't look surprised. "You saw them, didn't you?" Panting, shivering, the friends could barely speak. We... Jake stammered, eyes wide with terror. The Watchman sighed. "You were lucky. They only play with those who wander in." Sarah, tears streaming down her face, choked out, "What were they?" The Watchman shook his head. "Spirits, shadows, call them what you will. They don't like being disturbed." Ryan, usually the skeptic, looked around the village. "Has anyone ever not made it back?" The Watchman didn't answer. He simply turned and walked away, his figure disappearing into the dimly lit streets. The next morning, the friends decided to leave the village immediately. Before leaving, Ryan asked one of the shopkeepers about the Watchman. The old man frowned. "Watchman? What Watchman?" "The old man who sits at the forest edge. He warned us." The shopkeeper shook his head. "Son, there's no one like that here." The friends exchanged horrified glances. They turned back to where they had last seen him, but his spot was empty. No footprints, no trace. Just a rusted old bell lying in the dirt, covered in moss. If you love chilling horror stories like this, don't forget to subscribe to Ghostly Tale. Who knows? The next story might just be real.